I just got up and I was sort of looking at some news and all that, and came across this sort of thing on a US TV network. Found it interesting. Share. This lady's just received shitloads of backlog in terms of base deliveries. Oops. Let me just make sure I didn't have the audio on. Share sound. I'll listen in so I can actually follow it.
Ever. Cubblocks. Classic.
For Minnesota toy store owner Amy Saldana.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Nothing is more fulfilling than receiving a fresh batch of toys. Her stockroom at Kitty Wampus is filled to the brim with boxes waiting to be opened.
This is inventory that I've taken delivery of earlier this year than normal. Now it's coming in at such a clip. Some of this also represents just a catch-up of inventory we've been waiting months for.
Amy is great.
So yeah, a lot of small businesses. This is the other side of the COVID sort of fallout, you could say. People that are basically, the supply chain is just a mess. It is an absolute mess around the world. There are other, this is not only off Europe. There are boats off Australian ports. There are boats. There are delays of getting stuff out of Australia to China or other parts of the world or Japan or whatever. There are delay chain all over the place. There's a lot of uncoordination because once you actually break the normal flow, you've got a good just-in-time flow, which is efficient and keeps costs down. But once you actually get these sort of COVID type delays where we went crazy and just locked everything down continuously and all that, these are the consequences, You can't get stuff. It's all over the place. Just forward it a bit.
To be affecting everyone, and it started because of an unforeseen increase in consumer demand.
The people who have jobs, they have more money than ever. A lot of them pass their time by buying things.
So now we're being blamed. It's not the lockdowns. It's not all the other stuff. It's people that have got money, that are in a job, that are buying too many things online. Well, I would have gone down to the shop. Most people would have done the same thing because you can get it quick and all that. But if you can't find it because inventory isn't getting in, and if you're basically told you have to be locked down and you have to be sort of kept safe, well, obviously, typical, of media companies basically blaming people for the disruption of a supply chain, which they have no control over. Supply chain, whether you're buying things online or not buying it is irrelevant. Let's not forget that all stores hold stuff in their inventory and warehouses. They can get it to you either in the store or online. It's irrelevant, completely and utterly irrelevant. It's a misdirect. That's what I dislike about the current media. It is basically lockdowns. That's what's actually caused a lot of these problems, this disruption in supply chains and stuff like that. If you take a look anywhere around the world, it's the same sort of situation. We had the same sort of situation in Hobart when we couldn't get stuff in from Melbourne. It was delayed for days upon days. It was on the port. It couldn't get, I was constantly looking at stuff that I was waiting for, and it was there for about a week on the port. And then the next week, it's sort of, eventually there were some shipments that came into the northern part of Tasmania, and there it was basically quarantined as well. And so there was delay there, and then eventually it got to me a week and a half. But the stuff had already got into the country. It took about 2 weeks to get in from the US. a bit more than that, but it was, you know, and then it was massively delayed in Australia for about double the time. So these are just typical bloody excuses. What do you expect?
More, urging the White House to consider a proposal to incentivize the use of National Guard and/or utilize naval ports to help unload cargo, drive trucks, provide chassis, and unlock port congestion.
Have any of you ever seen a shipping crisis like this?
No, not in our lifetime. And
Daniel, Michael, Ramon, and Frank are longshoremen.
Exactly. How the hell would you ever see a crisis like this? You know, we've never had rolling lockdowns. We've never had, you know, completely upending our economy the way these governments have irresponsibly done. Who's it served? The Bezos of the world, the Amazons, you know, the fast food industry, all these who've got their own networks. Small businesses that have been decimated in this crisis. Like that lady that's waiting, and now she's been basically inundated with stock that she ordered ages ago. Now she's trying to sort it all out. These are and you know, that's an additional cost for her. But do you think governments are taking all this into consideration? The fallout and the consequences of their actions? Definitely no. They're going to blame somebody else. I mean, the media is already blaming people that are buying online. I mean, how crazy is that?
At the twin ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach, where 40% of our nation's imports are received. They oversee the loading and unloading of the ships that dock there.
So quite simply,
just look at the ships that are just sitting there. Shitloads. There's hundreds and hundreds of ships across the Pacific, across the Atlantic, that are just sitting idle or moving very slowly because they know that when they get to their destination, nobody's in a hurry because it's a mess at the moment. Absolutely a mess. I mean, even when it comes people, I mean, I hear the solutions that people say, you know, I mean, obviously if you were to use National Guard trucks and vehicles and stuff like that, that would provide some relief, yes. If you were to use some of the military ports, that would provide some relief. But at the same time, a lot of these ports are not designed for containers. They don't have the containerization facilities. In many cases, a lot of the actual ships are actually roll on, roll off. If you take a look at the amphibious ships and the ready support ships of the US Navy, they actually roll on, roll off. So they actually come and actually sit on and actually have truck and vehicles bringing stuff in and taking stuff off. Because the top part is usually you've got all these devices to actually to refuel ships at sea. You know, you don't put containers on top, you put them inside. So it's roll on, roll off. Container ships, these things are sitting on top. So you need cranes, specialized cranes to move that. So it's not that practical. You know, so bulk carriers, yes, you could basically offload bulk carriers in military ports, but when it comes to container ships, no, you couldn't. They just don't have the facilities to do that. So that's, again, ignorance on their part. I'm surprised that nobody told them that or researched it. I mean, I bloody know it. And I don't even, well, as a youngster, as a representative of the Australian Peace Committee, I was State Secretary, the Maritime Union were affiliates. So I had a bit of, let's say, insight to the industry. But you would think that reporters would actually ask the obvious questions to people that are experts that know their stuff in the industry and get some information. No, God no, that would be too hard to do research. We just want to basically spew out propaganda and emotive things. Oh, look at the problem and no solutions. or dumb solutions.
Where is the breakdown?
The breakdown is in the supply chain in general. I mean, there's many pieces of the puzzle. First of all, we need space on our terminals. You need the truck drivers to be engaged. You need to have facilities available and open so that they can deliver the cargo to and return the.
That's if they can get clearance. That's if they can basically, be, come out of quarantine, because a number of the truck drivers are also finding themselves in quarantine in different parts. That's the other story that nobody's telling you, So basically being quarantined for 2 weeks, obviously things are being delayed. So they're delivering stuff and then getting quarantined. So it's a mess, absolute mess,
Equipment back. And more importantly, we need the rail.
How long have some of these?
And remember, these containers have to come back with stuff. See, the normal supply chain is you get containers coming in with stuff, you get containers going out with stuff. Otherwise, it's not worth it. Ship owners will actually just park their ship or take ships offline. A number of the Greek ship owners have basically parked a lot of ships. They're not using them. They've sent some of their Southeast Asian staff back to their countries. Some of the crews, a lot of the officers are basically Greek, but a lot of the crews are not from Greece. They tend to be basically from, there are some, but the majority of them tend to be from other countries. We just don't have sufficient numbers to supply. The ship owners have built massive fleets in that regard. So it's an absolute mess in that regard as well. And you can understand, leaving a ship idle for a long time costs money. You've got to pay wages, you've got to pay fuel costs. So you put out less, and still there's these massive delays. So not looking good.
Containers been stacked up here.
I guarantee you there's containers on this dock right now that have been here 30, 60, 90, 6 months that are sitting on these docks throughout LA and Long Beach that no one's come to pick up.
And yet the ships keep coming.
6 months or longer. Not enough people to move them around. If you're basically quarantining continuously from state to state as a truck driver, or basically being mandated and not willing to take that option, and being pushed out of the industry.
The port continues to break records, averaging around 900,000 containers per month, projecting 10.8 million this year, a 17% increase from 2020.
This is just getting worse. It started in 2020 and it's just been escalating. Where are they going to store all this stuff? Is the interesting thing. This whole system is just choking. I'm surprised it hasn't collapsed yet, Well, probably has, because things are just abandoned, not being moved. It's sort of just, the collapse isn't visible. So.
Those containers need to be moved someplace else to give some relief.
The longshoremen say they have 14,000 port workers in Southern California to move those shipments around the clock. But the problem is, to where?
As far as we're concerned, we're only a piece of the puzzle. We need the rest of the supply chain to work out their logistics.
The rest of the supply chain is largely quarantined in their states. Or you've got basically companies in America that are not producing or are in lockdowns and stuff like that. And if they can't fill those containers stay there. They don't get sent back. And without new containers coming back for those ships to basically take them and go, it's the whole supply chain is in an absolute mess at the moment. What's the government doing? They're just mandating, and they're just doing their remaining woke activities. They just, this problem has been going on for months and getting worse. And it sort of started with the previous administration. I'm not only blaming the current administration. So it's been going on for a very long time and just getting worse. Obviously, the current administration isn't helping with all their woke policies. They're just making it worse. But pretty much it's a mess all around. This is the fallout of COVID people are not talking about. Until the stores start becoming bare, that's when the shit will really hit the fan, and you'll see riots and all sorts of things. Not a good thing going forward if this continues.
To have this cargo moved.
At the Port of Long Beach, my colleague Martha Raditz took to the waters.
There are more than 60 container ships anchored here waiting to unload. And those are just the ones you can see. Way out in the Pacific, there are dozens more.
Even once
hundreds in the Pacific, shitloads of container boats, ships in the Pacific, shitloads. And some of them basically have just parked in certain parts of the world and they've sent their crews back. Just mothballed them in certain locations. It's an absolute mess because basically a lot of there are not enough port facilities in Greece to basically house all the Greek ships. It's, the Greeks have got one of the biggest merchant navies. I still think it is the number one merchant navy in the world. And unless China has recently eclipsed, because they were number 2, then they may have. I haven't checked the recent data, but pretty much, Chinese have got a lot of ports which they can put stuff. Greece is a much smaller country, so pretty much they've just scattered them all over the world. The merchant navy is pretty much scattered, and I have heard that a number of Greeks have flown back to Greece. Crew members, that is. So yeah, not looking good. Let's put it that way. They've just left skeleton crews just to maintain the ships until things get sorted out. I wonder how long that's going to take.
They make it into the port.
Hello!
They sit and wait in this cargo campground.
You've been here for a month? Yes. Long time.
It's taking 3 times longer to clear vessels at the ports compared to before the pandemic.
Exactly. Before the pandemic.
Whenever they're eventually cleared and the goods make it on land, some of the containers are emptied at shipping logistics distribution centers like this one.
They've come in and we're in the process of transloading those containers. So we get the goods off the truck, repalletize them to different retailer specs, and then we send them direct to the DCs and the stores.
But there's a shortage of truck drivers too.
The trucking industry, a lot of them have sought other opportunities in other sectors.
Which makes getting shipments into stores.
Exactly. Because basically they'd had enough of all the lockdowns because they were going through different places and they were being locked down. So they got sick and tired of it. Or sometimes when even a lot of these sort of things were putting pressure on them. Some of the independent truck drivers sold their vehicles. So they got out of the industry because it became too much of a hassle, and they were losing money because there's a lot of insurance, maintenance and stuff like that you need. And if your income is haphazard all over the place, that's what happens. People get out of an industry that's all over the place, and what it does is it exacerbates the whole problem.
Stores like Amy's even harder.
My husband has this saying, I sleep like a baby, which is that I wake up every couple of hours screaming. So that kind of describes this year very well.
That doesn't sound good. Yes, the fate of small business people. Waking up at night and screaming. I'd get a dartboard with politicians on it. Ding, 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 ding. Just to relieve some frustration and anger.
Well,
she's been in the toy store business for 15 years. Her expertise helped her see the writing on the wall.
We knew at the end of last year that there were severe supply chain disruptions. So in January, I ordered all my puzzles for the year, including Christmas puzzles, and my staff thought I was a little nutty, but I did that because I ran short last year. That's really cute, little deer.
See, it was happening from last year, as I said. and from the previous administration. So this has been happening now for a while. I mean, you know, that's from the horse's mouth. It's just been getting a bit worse. But unfortunately, yes, not much leadership at the top in the US currently. You know, it just seems like business as usual. That means no business.
This year, I took bigger risks with new products that I wasn't sure what they were going to.
Smart woman. She planned ahead. That's what you got to do, especially in this sort of environment, if you want to survive.
Be like. And then I placed a lot of orders in June. They're hitting now up through November 15th. So there's a lot we still don't have. What I'm doing now is pulling up my spreadsheet of orders that we're still waiting for. This year, my spreadsheet is 127 lines long, and I'm not sure I'm going to see maybe 40% of this.
The global supply chain crisis.
So, you know, this is a woman that actually has planned, has ordered earlier, and basically still only managed to, maybe if she's lucky, get 40% of her stock. And that's somebody that's actually planned well. Can you understand others that for their own reasons haven't, or believed the nonsense from the government and thought, oh yeah, everything will get back to normal, you know? Because you've got to put up a lot of capital as well. That's stressful. I mean, in the lower sort of interest rate environment of printing money at the moment, it may be easier in the short term currently. Long term may be a different story, but the reality is that can you imagine others that have basically believed the official line and have not been as you know, haven't planned ahead a bit more? You know, I suspect that their inventory is probably even lower than 40%, because there's a lot of stuff on those ports that hasn't been picked up for months.
Crisis is hitting smaller and medium-sized businesses in a completely different way.
Exactly. It's not hitting the Amazons, obviously. We know that.
They're little players. They're little fish in a big pond. And if you look at what Walmart, Target, Home Depot have done, they've actually chartered their own ships. For small and medium.
Because they can. As I said, they've got their own network. They've got their own warehouses. They've got their own truck drivers. They've got their own network. They've had it even before this crisis hit. So it's a lot of the smaller businesses that are struggling and the smaller businesses that need relief. But I don't see any plan in the United States, in Australia, or many other places to actually really help the small businesses that are really struggling and have been put under a lot of pressure. That is annoying. That is annoying, because we're going to see a lot of destruction of a lot of wealth that's been created over decades by a lot of these really entrepreneurial, hardworking people. You know, my old man was years ago, was a small businessman before he was, prior to that, he was a Boilermaker welder. But I see, you know, as a small business person, he actually worked far more hours, because you got to run a business and to make it successful, you've got to work a lot of hours. It's a lot of time. Dad used to get up in the crack of dawn, and we were running our business pretty much 7 days a week to about 10 o'clock at night. You know, so that's a lot of hours of work. We did have sort of like our own rostering. We had 2 other people, staff that worked, and us, me and my sisters and mum. So, but still, it was a lot of work, let's put it that way, a lot of hours in order to make things successful and keep at it and try and get good products and go out to wholesalers and try and get the best deals, and sometimes go directly to the actual producers for certain items and stuff like that you could. So yeah, that was hard. In this sort of climate, God almighty, how difficult it would be, especially for certain items where you need them on a daily basis, like a lot of corner shops were, you know, or still are. So yes, and you don't want to be buying bulk when potentially your stock could go out of date. So it's, where this toys, it's a different thing. Not everybody's in the same sort of industry where you can hold on to stock for far longer because it's not going to go bad. It's not going to go rotten or whatever else.
Medium-sized businesses, they're just telling their patrons, you have to be patient or we can help you find something else.
Happy Little Dinosaurs is a new one for us.
Yes, nothing like Happy Little Dinosaur. Anyway, that's my basically, bit of a morning sort of session, you could say. Right. Tell it as it is. It's not part of the regular sort of stuff. This will not be part of the regular sort of stuff. My channel is still basically nutrition, health based and all that. But this is, this affects people's health. It affects their livelihood. It affects their lives, their family lives and stuff like that. And the reality is the way this whole fiasco with COVID has been managed, when as a respiratory infection, all you need to do is give people vitamin D. How easy is that? And you could have provided a lot of protection to a lot of people without destroying the entire society or a lot of people's lives that had taken years and years to build. That's, something that a lot of these people, a lot of these destroyed families have broken up. Divorce rates have gone up, violence has gone up, stress has gone up. A lot of lives have been upended. Yeah, it's really unfair. And I think those misanthropists in the UK that basically jumped the gun and pushed out their garbage and nonsense in their early epidemiological studies, where others basically criticised them, but then went quiet because they were too scared. But those people should have been basically, should at a minimum in history, they should be written down as really nasty misanthropists, and all those who basically supported their line and all that and caused a lot of this damage to people's lives. How many people have suicided? They seem to forget those numbers, or they're not important. Yes, they don't make the news. Some 80-year-old passed away that would have passed away from the common cold or flu, because that is how bad. It's like a severe flu infection, nothing more. Even that could have been mitigated to some extent. But some people that have got comorbidities, very old, would have gone anyway. I mean, you can't keep people alive forever. It's just nonsense. But but they don't care about people that are in their middle age that have built businesses for all their, for years and years, and they don't care about young people that have basically had their lives upended in many different ways. It's a damn crazy world that we live in. That's all I can say. Anyway, I've had my spew. I'll upload this later today. Go and have a shower. Probably need one. Too scruffy. I just did the morning shave, and that's about it. I need to, yes, do the third part. Got the other two out of the way, the toilet thing, and now I just need to do the shower, clean up a bit. Anyway, see yous.